What is going on, all of you amazing gamers out there in the world? I am Mega Am, so thank you for watching this YouTube video. Whether you are a new or returning viewer, I appreciate you stopping by. And I don't really know what to call the title of this video because it's been on the back of my mind for about a week now, meaning to sit down and record it and get my thoughts out there. I'm definitely in this mindset right now where I feel like I'm almost hesitant to jump into sequels or follow-ups. Like, I'm very much in this mindset of wanting to have brand new experiences for the most part. There are exceptions to that rule that I will mention as we go through the video. But, you know, I'm thinking recently, like, I decided not to buy Legends ZA. That's kind of, you could argue, a follow-up to Arceus. I know it's doing a lot of different stuff. That one's a bit of a stretch. I also decided to cancel my pre-order of Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, which that I would say is more of a direct follow-up with similar gameplay. Obviously, there's going to be a lot new that's unique to this game specifically, but I've played Age of Calamity. And so in my mind, playing this game is not a priority because I would rather prioritize a brand new experience. And as I'm getting older and I have less and less time with having a full-time job and other stuff I want to do with my life, I'm trying to limit myself to, honestly, usually more indie games. There tends to be fewer indie game sequels, I've noticed. It really depends on the series and how prolific it is. Like, you have Hollow Knight Silksong is a big sequel, Hades 2 is a big sequel, I mean, Shovel Knight has a bunch of different games, but no direct sequel, actually, now that I think about it. Shantae, I guess if you want to count that, has a bunch of sequels, follow-ups games. Blaster Master, I'm trying to think of other examples. I know there are some, but a lot of indie games tend to just be like one-off things unless they turn into a prolific series. Guacamelee is another example that has a sequel. But a lot of AAA games right now especially are either remakes or remasters and sequels. There's not a lot of brand new games, which is why something like Donkey Kong Bonanza, for example, you could argue, sure, it's kind of a follow-up to Odyssey, but also not really. It has a completely unique gameplay style. ZA, you could also kind of argue that for, so I could get that Pokemon Legends ZA game. I could get that argument as well. But there are a lot of games that are just sequels and not a lot of not new ideas. There are new gameplay ideas in each game. That doesn't change anything. But the fact that it is still a follow-up, sometimes even set in the same universe or direct story follow-up or prequel, it's definitely... I don't want to say it's not creative, because of course it comes down to the individual gameplay in these games where it can be more creative for sure. It's just, I find myself preferring one-off experiences, things that are completely new, or at least like completely different and are not a part of a continuation or a follow-up of something before it. And I think it's been so easy for me to ignore some of these. I mean, I'm going to call it out, especially some of these first-party Nintendo games because of that. Honestly, like, I'm not really feeling much of any FOMO from Legends ZA right now, and I'm not really regretting canceling my pre-order for Hyrule Warriors, to be honest, which is like, the games look good, don't get me wrong. I'm not really interested in them as much as I may have been before. And to be fair, I've done some convincing to get myself out of it to save money and also not buy as many games, but it's still just like, these games were never screaming to me as like, I have to play these, you know? The one exception, which I'll get into right now, I was mentioning some exceptions before, is Metroid Prime 4, because this is an example of a series that I want to support almost no matter what, because I love Metroid. It's the same thing with Sonic, maybe Kirby. I mean, Kirby's a little bit on the line for me there. I was still debating about Kirby Air Riders, but at least for me, that's a new experience because I've never owned the original game. I've only played a little bit of multiplayer here and there over the course of its existence. But, you know, Kirby Air Riders would be a full jump in to the series and really get to check that out. So that is one I'm still currently pre-ordering and still currently planning on playing. Hades, I've never played Hades before. I have the physical version of Hades 2 pre-ordered. And that's another thing I'll get into in a bit. But with like Prime 4 specifically, right? Obviously, this is the 4th entry in a series. And this kind of goes back to a conversation I've had before on this channel about companies numbering their games and like making sequels. Because here's the thing. I think, for example, calling a game Metroid Prime 4 has similar gameplay, so it makes sense. And you're going to be able to sell it to the hardcore audience that way. If this game was called Metroid Beyond, like the subtitle without the Prime 4, people still would have been excited, but it would have been a different kind of excitement than seeing the Metroid Prime 4 after 10 years of the original coming back. And like that was a big deal because finally a fourth entry in the series that people love and already has established, right? So that was a safe bet calling it Prime 4 than having Beyond. And it makes sense in this case because it is a similar gameplay style. You know, you could argue on the case for a series like Final Fantasy, where a lot of the games, like every entry is completely different nowadays. It used to be more similar. Nowadays, it's completely different. Look at 16. 16 was action-based. 15 was driving around in a car. Some interesting, more modern stuff in that game. And 14 was an MMO. Like, there's a lot of variety there, but they continue to number them. I think mainly because Final Fantasy itself is such an iconic name, and then you just throw a number on it. It is the next one. It is the continuation, you know? And then you have spin-offs, which have subtitles and stuff like that. But that's the thing, is like making something a sequel or a follow-up has, I think, more guaranteed sales. And that is why a lot of companies are doing sequels and follow-ups these days, because they're safer bets, right? They're able to place a safer bet on, you know, an already established fandom that is going to check out these games, and, you know, maybe you can hope to cater to a new audience, you know? I think Nintendo is trying that a little bit with Prime 4 by making it a little more open and adding some new, more supposedly streamlined elements there. I think they are trying to make it more approachable. We will see if that ends up being the case. I still have a feeling it might not be. Like, I know some people say Prime 4 could be the best-selling Metroid game. I don't know. It has the potential to be, but I don't think it's a guarantee. Currently, it's Dread. But before that, it was the original Prime. So, actually, it might be Prime Remastered now. Actually, I don't know. Let me know in the comments below. But it's one of those things that's like, yes, it is a safer bet for fans. It is a safer bet for companies. But at least to me, and let me know if you feel this way in the comments below, it is so much more interesting when these games do something completely new. That's why, like, when Splatoon came out for Nintendo, let's use Splatoon as an example, right? That was big because Nintendo was trying a competitive shooter, and it worked out really, really well for them. It really did. You look at how popular Splatoon is now, it is one of their biggest series that they own. And, you know, that was them trying something new back during the Wii U era, and it really paid off, and it was fresh and unique and exciting. It was the talk of the town for the Wii U, especially because the Wii U didn't have any other games at the moment, but you know what I mean. Well, I guess still like, because Smash Brothers was coming out a little bit before Splatoon, so they were also talking about that. Anyways, Splatoon was big for them. ARMS, not so much, but that at least looked unique. Like, look at ARMS and tell me that game is not unique. Like, tell me that. Like, sure, it may not be for you, but it is very much unique in its own way, for sure. Just like their take on a more traditional fighting game while also being more like motion control heavy. Like, that is Nintendo trying something new. Dragon Drive, same thing. You know, take that as you will. Obviously, the new things don't always work out. ARMS wasn't the best seller. It didn't sell horribly, but it sold a couple million, I think. Dragon Drive, I have no idea. But that was them trying something new. Nintendo does like to try something new every once in a while. But a lot of times, even they are susceptible to relying on continuities. You know, especially like look at Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, right? But then, you know, there's definitely not a gray area. Not everything is a direct follow-up. You know, I wouldn't say Forgotten Land is a follow-up to, Star Allies? Like, you know, 3D versus 2D. So it's still the same series and similar core gameplay, but I feel like it's different enough. So it really depends on how granular you want to get with, like, follow-ups. But to me, it's like, this is just how I've been feeling lately, and a big reason why I've been so into indie games. Not only, I mean, they're cheaper, of course, and you're supporting in smaller teams, sometimes even solo developers. A lot of them are just so interesting and unique, and not that Nintendo games and other first-party AAA games can't be, but there's definitely a lack of some sort of, like, originality, creativity to me when it's just, like, a follow-up. You know what I mean? When it's just a follow-up, it can still be really good. Like I said, games like Legend ZA, Age of Imprisonment look really good. Even Prime 4. I'm excited for Prime 4. I'm going to be buying that day one. You know, so there are definitely exceptions to the rule. But in general, I've been feeling this way about, like, just wanting more original things. And it's tough in an industry where games cost so much and they take so long to develop. It is a big risk for companies to take that step. And then if they don't do well, companies are even more averse to doing new things. But I feel like doing new, smaller games will ultimately keep the game industry sustainable. I mean, look at what happened with Hi-Fi Rush with Xbox, right? Critics loved Hi-Fi Rush. I don't know if it sold the best, but people loved it. Unfortunately, Tango, Xbox gave him the boot because fuck Xbox. But You know, it's like when these companies try something new and creative and colorful, especially for like regarding their brand or their identity in the gaming industry, it's honestly refreshing. And you know, Kirby's one of those examples where I feel like it's refreshing because the game hasn't come back in a while, and so that, like, bringing it to a modern audience from like 2 decades ago is honestly more refreshing as a follow-up game, and it's technically a follow-up to the original GameCube game, but it's been 20 years, you know what I mean? So it is, I feel like, fresh enough. Whereas you have Age of Imprisonment, Age of Calamity came out in 2020, right? That's a 5-year gap. Like, it's not a big gap, you know? And so, and then you have, if you want to be even more specific, you have the Fire Emblem Warriors game. Not to say any of these games are bad. That is not my point here. My point is talking about just, at least personally, how I've been feeling. And I want to see if any of you feel this way, because there's definitely, I feel like, I don't know, I feel like I've been feeling that fatigue recently of all of these follow-ups, and am I trapped in this pattern of buying all of these follow-up games nonstop? You know, it's not a good feeling to have personally. I personally don't think it's a good feeling to have. And so it's one of those things that's like, okay, where does it end? When do I want to stop? At what point am I fatigued with a certain series and I want to be done? Age of Imprisonment I was originally going to buy day one. I might still get it down the line because the story has some potential. The gameplay looks really smooth. But then again, if I want that experience, I might just go replay Age of Calamity. You know? So it really definitely, I mean, I'm in the minority here for sure. This is how I've been feeling recently, and I think this is why I've been able to justify canceling some of my pre-orders or disregarding any sort of interest in some of these games. You know, Prime 4 being the exception, because I'm a really big Metroid fan. I want that series to succeed, and I want to support it, and I want to check it out. But, you know, it's with a lot of series, I mean, even indie games, if they go on long enough, you know, it's one of those things. Even with Shantae, I started to feel that fatigue after Risky Revolution, even Seven Sirens. It's been a lot of Shantae games, at least 6. And so, like, you know, with any series, if it goes on too long, it's the same thing with, like, TV shows. If the TV show goes on too long, I feel like you start to get a little sick of it. And it's like, all good things should come to an end, and usually sooner than people want them to, than they think they want them to. So it's one of those interesting things that's been on my mind very recently as of this upload, and something I just wanted to communicate, specifically here about games. But it's one of those things that I would really appreciate more original games in the industry. You can find those if you look outside of the usual just Nintendo, if you're a big Nintendo fan, or Xbox or Sony, you know what I mean? You can tend to find more of those examples out there, especially in smaller AA games or indies. Like, for the most part, a lot of them are more original, and there's so many of them. So that's why exploring the indie scene in recent years has been so refreshing, to kind of take a step back from some of these just like long-running mainstay staples. Not that those are bad by any means, I want to reiterate that. It's just having a break from them every once in a while ain't a bad thing, but that's just how I've been feeling. So let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. I don't even know what I'm going to call the title of this video, but let me know your thoughts on like the ideas of these like long-running sequel series. Are you getting fatigued of any of them? Have you been looking for other games as kind of a way out to kind of find other things to play in the meantime, or are you totally content with them, which is totally fine? Like I said, I think I'm in the minority with this one, so let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Otherwise, I will catch you all on the next video or live stream. And until then, regardless of what games you play, keep on enjoying them. See you later.